The fact that objects are not caused anywhere, anytime, suggests that the objects rely on cause and also conditions. When I went to the snow-capped mountains, when it passed 2,500 meters above sea level, the green trees started disappearing. Whether it's a tropical area or whether it's a rainforest, if you go up high above the sea level, then even the trees disappear. Just so our Baekdu mountain, if you go high up, then the trees get shorter and the trees get less in number. If we go up to 3,500 meters above sea level, and if there are trees there, then it means that, and also under the condition that if the trees are being caused without any reason or without any cause, then there should be trees even in Himalayan ranges that's about 5,000 meters sea level. For example, I went to moon and there's no oxygen and there's no water, but despite all that, without reason and without cause and without condition, if an object or if a person can exist, then there should be a person or there should be objects in the moon. But when you look at those things, we are aware that everything appears depending on the cause and the conditions, and depending on the cause and the conditions, everything disappeared too. So even this thing called happiness has not been existing from the beginning, but depending on the cause and depending on the condition, they are formed. It's just a phenomenon, but the thing called happiness has not been existing since its very beginning. That will be your big misunderstanding to expect happiness to happen just because it has been existing since its beginning. It goes the same even together with the suffering. If you say that the suffering has been existing since its beginning, then you cannot eradicate suffering. And also, if the suffering is caused regardless of the condition or regardless of status, then that makes it very complicated. But regardless of this and that, all the things that exist in regards to the phenomenon, they have a reason and they have a cause for their existence and they have condition for their existence. And it's very evident truth that they exist for this reason. For example, when you're going to the moon, even though there is no oxygen, if people can last, then people will just then there's no reason for people to wear oxygen tanks on their back and wear the spacecraft, the clothes especially made for the space traveling. There's no need for it. But everything that we take in or everything that we understand, everything is caused depending on the condition and the cause. So we should be aware of that. But in Korean Buddhism, we say that the heart is forever, and also that it has got nothing to do with external conditions. But that is not true. The heart only feels the same because of the conditions and the cause. And as you know very well, the 6 parameters. We say our 18 words along this. The reason why we say it's 18 words is because it is a parameter which we can know from our consciousness. Other than that, we can't be sure of it. And so we are very well aware that objects cannot be caused or anywhere regardless of conditions. So if you go up through the history, in the fossil fuels, even like millions of years ago, if you check the time, the scientific research that suggests the fossil fuels, we are only able to accept as history if it has a scientific truth. But if they say that fossil fuel contains the bones of dinosaurs that existed 1 million years ago, that means the dinosaurs exist then, and it's not like we put the dinosaurs bones which is 1 million years old, right? So whatever truth we are able to identify now should be based on the condition and the cause which was provided then. That's why, if I can make a joke here, during the age of dinosaurs, when there is no existence of human beings, when you think about the origin of humans then, and if you go back to the history, at the time of dinosaurs, those memories, there was a dinosaurs which ate rabbits or rabbits, and they were so strong, and so they dug holes under the ground, and so they lived in. And so our ancestors are those which could not even go out in the sun and live. And when a big meteor hit the earth, and when the whole world, the volcanoes of the all over the world erupted because of the shock. And as you know, the center of the earth is almost similar to the water, and so everything bursted. The magmas of the center of the world bursted, and the earth was filled with gas and magma, and the sunlight was blocked, and the ice age came, and everything froze to death. At the time, more than 99.9% of the living things died. But after that, there are a few things which survived. Things like maple tree, and also mammals which dug holes in the underground, they survived. And there are still rats which did not evolve over the time, but still stays under the ground. But depending on the situation, our human beings, they came above the ground, and they start evolving. Although it's not the same, but this human race, which is similar to us, they started their own existence then. So even the existence or even the formulation of the human race is depending on the cause and the condition of the time, but it is not caused without any reason or cause. Even the scientists nowadays, they are still finding for the reasons for the human race to disappear, and that could be the global warming or meteors hitting the earth, or it could be virus that's spreading around the world. And they give out so many different ideas for the eradication of the human race in the world, and they do experiments on it. But in my opinion, But in my opinion, human race could be those human race could have the shortest lifespan ever that's in our life. The dinosaurs they live for so many years, but it doesn't seem like we were living as long as them. I don't think human race will last so long. But when there's no human being, can dinosaurs become a Buddha? No, dinosaurs cannot become Buddha, so as dogs or other animals. So whichever Buddha comes to our world has to survive until human beings are reborn. And we call this Yongwa era, where another human form or another human race is formed. That means objects are relying on cause and the condition.
결과적 성질은 원인과 조건, 즉 바르고 완전한 원인과 조건들에서 생기는 것이다. 그 일체지라는 것을 제가 이제 설명을 들을 때 일체 종지라 그랬죠, 그죠?
When you look at it from the brain, then the whole knowledge.
지혜가 생기는 것도 그것도 뜻없이 우리처럼 그냥 뭐 바로.
All knowledge is not caused by anything or everything, but even the all knowledge or omniscience is caused by condition and also cause. The special thing about the change or existence, there's nothing special which is outside the rules. Everything is caused by condition and the cause, and so as they change, everything is changing by cause and condition. There's nothing that's outside this theory. We call this dependent origination relations law. So that is the theory for existence. If this disappears and that disappears, that is the theory of the existence. If it stays without condition and cause, it is there, but you cannot say it is not there at the same time. So if you come and tell me that something happened coincidentally or by destiny, that's not correct. Everything is as per the relations. So if you say you got disease by fate, then that is not wrong. No, that is wrong. And also, you cannot catch a disease coincidentally. You cannot have alcohol. You cannot be sick due to alcohol if you do not drink alcohol. If you say you haven't drunk alcohol at all, but you are suffering from disease that's related to alcohol, can you be sick? That might be. It's possible if your mother, when she had you, she could have drunk alcohol. Then you can be sick due to disease. But even that has a cause. That's because you met your mother who drinks when she is pregnant. So the fact that you are becoming Buddha is also the fact also that you have a specific cause. There's also a specific cause becoming a thief when you're becoming a thief. There is no one in this world who does not want to become a thief but became a thief. And there is also no one who did not become a thief when they wanted to become a thief. If the hurt, if there is a desire to become a thief and also your moral values at the same time, then you become a thief. this is a truth. That's a universal truth. When you have a market, and if your market does not go well, then that also has a reason.
망한 원인이
And there's also a condition, which for a reason why you became bankrupt. There can be no instance like your shops go bad if there's no reason. And even if you're making a lot of money from this market or your business, that also has a cause.
그 결과는 돈 많이 벌게 되는 원인과 조건의 결과는
A lot of Americans, they do not believe in cause and effect law, but this cause and effect law is very scientific. So when they do analysis, they do it from very scientific point of view.
그러니까 부처님이 되는 것도 역시 그 원인과 조건에 의해서 이루어진다.
So becoming a Buddha is also strictly abiding the theory, the rules and regulations of becoming Buddha.
이해가 됐죠, 그죠? 예?
What is the cause and conditions for gray hair?
네?
It's the age.
나이 들어서 늙어서
That you know. That is Buddhist teaching.
그게 불법이라. 근데 불법인데 아니불자 불법이 되는 것은 어떻게?
When you say Buddhist teaching or Buddhist doctrine, this means the sense of enlightenment in your head.
근데 이제 아니불자 불법이 되는 것은 안 늙었으면 좋겠다.
And your act of dyeing your hair also becomes a Buddhist doctrine under stubbornness or under and you try to hide the cause and the condition that's caused the natural acts, and since it cannot be hidden, your white hairs grow once again sooner or later. You can just make your hair bald just like me, but even if you make it bald, your gray hairs will grow up once again. So it is thought that omniscience or Buddha's knowledge has perfect condition and perfect cause. So if you want to become Buddha, then you become a Buddha. If you have seeds to become Buddha, or if you want to become Bodhisattva, then you become Bodhisattva because you're planting the seed of Bodhisattva. If you try hard and if you practice proper asceticism as per your wish to become Buddha, then you will become a Buddha. If you think of it in a rational way, if you do not take it in a rational way, then you will know that nothing happens in a coincidental way. Just like you cannot have beans out of the red bean seed. Why is it so? If the conditions is not good after you plant seeds, then if the condition is not good, then you will not have the proper fruit bearing out of it. That's because there is no proper condition behind it. So if you only have the heart to or desire to become Buddha, but if you do all acts that's not related to becoming Buddha, then you cannot become a Buddha. So even if you plant the seeds, if you're not able to provide the perfect condition, then you will not be bearing a proper fruit. Even a life has a condition. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think love comes first or money comes first in matters of your children's marriage? Tell me. If you say love is first, then are you willing to send your kids to someone who doesn't have any money or who's like a beggar? Tell me accurately. Can you send it to someone? Can you send your kids to someone who doesn't have any money? Tell me honestly.
아니 그냥 그 나중에 지가 간다 그러면 어쩔 수 없지.
If she runs away, that's inevitable. But as with you, you're not allowing it, right? Then I'm going to ask first: is money first or is love first? If there's no love, it's not possible. So what I mean to say is, sometimes love is caused due to money, and sometimes just because there is love, money seems to be more. But do not just think of it as an absolute thing. You cannot just live with money or with love. So when they come to me and when they tell me that they're going to get married, I explain to them, then there is a lot of conditions. Love is not absolute, but this is also a condition. This is what I explain to them. And about 1/4 of the couple, they get married, they divorce. So if 4 couples get married, one of them gets divorced. And it's because of their disputes in characteristics. But when you do analysis it, then you know that there is not really so much trouble as with your characters. But if you just look at it, then if you see if the husband earns money or not, then but also if the husband brings a lot of money, then also there is some problem because they will argue about toothpaste being squeezed from the middle. Why don't you do it from the bottom? And also, why do you take out your clothes like this? But if you do this kind of things, if you don't have money, then it becomes a condition for divorce. So while you're living as a human life, this kind of many things. Money that is not to last, and also conditions for food. All these different conditions, they get mixed and they provide the platform for married life. Once a man got married because his wife was so beautiful, but she didn't know how to talk, she didn't know how to cook, she didn't know how to bring up kids. She was only interested in her own appearance. She would just go and stay at hair parlor for hours. How long will this kind of love last? It won't last long. So it's just that these conditions are becoming stronger. So even if we plant the beans, then depending on the sunlight, the water, and also depending on wild animals living close by, if the owner is not drunkard, then normally after drinking, the owner will come and step on the beans and kill it. If you have all these conditions, the beans grow. But if one of the conditions gets missing, or if one of the conditions are not being kept, then the beans, they die and disappear. No matter how much you pray to Buddha, that is not possible. Just plant a bean and pray to God or pray to Buddha. Do not even water it, and just pray to Buddha that hope that you pray for the very growth of these beans and see if that works out. Buddha has never taught you in this way. So if you argue about everything, then you should always argue about the conditions and the cause. Now that you are of this age, I'm going to ask one more time.
여러분, 내가 다시 한번 물을게요.
If your husband does not earn any money and if your household is poor, then do you think you can still live with only love?
수 있을 것 같습니까?
Tell me honestly.
아유, 솔직하게 얘기해봐. 에? 이런 거 못할 뭐죠?
It's not possible.
그게 탁도 없는.
The more you age,
늙어갈수록
there are some things that fade away, but there are some things that get stronger. There are some conditions.
그렇단 말이야. 그 조건이. 옅어지는. 그러니까
So amongst all these numerous conditions and differences,
끄집어내느냐면
the fact that is common in everyday life,
팩트는
they exist relying on each other, and
따라서
also
성불이라는 안욕따라 삼약 삼육이 엄마 왜 맨날 안 놀아? 에? 왜?
with one of the students, she went to Seoul.
그래서 특수하고
There is nothing that is special and absolute at the same time in this world. Everything is caused by conditions and also cause.
때문에 깨달음 역시도 그와 똑같이 된 것이다.
Sometimes, why does your leg feel numb? That's because you're sitting for a long time.
오래 앉아 있으니까.
That's because you're sitting for a long time.
원인으로 그러죠.
There are about 4 people who feels their legs are numb.
코에다 침 바르시.
Put some saliva on your nose, but that has no effect. It's just that you have a wrong understanding of the cause and the condition, and we call that superstition.
그걸 미신이란데. 아상가는 무착보살이야.
Asanga is a great scholar. During the time of Abhidharma, this scholar was very special or very well acknowledged. When you're talking about, he wrote this book, Abhidharma Sammukhaya, during this time, and he wrote this book based on his understanding from the Mahayana practice. As is explained in this book, the consequences are caused by, it's just like it's written in spirit, the consequences are caused by cause and the condition.
결과에 살고 있잖아요, 그죠? 어제, 그제, 그저께 산 결과에 살아. 그래서 3년 전에.
But you always live as per your conditions and also causes of your everyday life. If you're looking at, if you're surviving on the fixed deposit that you put 3 years ago, but if there's no fixed deposit that you have put 3 years ago, and if you just go one day, and if you ask a bank to give you some money, then you might either be a psycho or also a thief or a robber.
그래서 여러분이 무단시
So without any virtue, if you pray for Buddha's blessings, then that also becomes either a robber or a thief or a psycho. But the funny thing here is, if you have already done some virtues, then even if you don't look for it or even if you don't pray for it, that will come to you. That is the funny part of it. The bad virtues or bad deeds that you have done before, no matter how much you try not even to take them, they will come to you. So thief, no matter how much he will stay for a long time, and even if he does not want to go to prison or to the police, one day police will come and catch him and put him into prison. So everything happens as per the cause and the condition.
그거는 이 결과라는
So
것은
if you do analysis on the consequences of these things, then there is not even a 0.01% that happens without any conditions.
원인과
Everything happens due to conditions and cause.
그럼 이제 그 결과라는 것은 다시
And that consequence also becomes a cause for tomorrow and day after tomorrow and also next year.
해원이 되고
Whatever life that we are living now becomes a cause for our aging and also our next life. So this thing called consequence is a consequence and cause at the same time. So is the consequence right now that we have becomes the cause of the future. You understand, right?
충분히 이해되죠?
In conditions,
조건들에는
there are conditions of potential and also there's a condition for
조건이 있어. 그러니까 이를테면 콩을 심었는데 이 콩이 결과가 달렸다라고 할 때 이 결과를 볼 때는
immobile condition and also the condition for
꼭 있어야 되는 조건이 있어. 뭐가 있어야 될까요? 물.
the condition that's also meaningless. For example, if you say when you have planted something and if you're looking at the sunlight and also the water and they become the condition for the
그럼 우리가 사는데 부동의 조건이 뭐죠? 예? 공기. 의식주보다 더
our immobile condition.
진주는 코 막고
And for our life, what do we need? We need air. And just like air is immobile.
그런데 어떤 절대자가 있어가지고 그대여 숨을 쉬지 않고 살아라 그러면
So if I ask you, do not breathe and live, but it is not possible. So there is something that cannot be changed.
또 뭐가 있어요? 물이 있어요.
And also water, something like water.
먹어도 한 보름 살아도 물은 안 먹으면 한
You can survive without food for days, but you cannot survive without water.
아무리 단식이라도 물은 먹어야 돼.
And you also have to drink oxygen.
먹어야 되지, 그죠? 그 단식한다고 콧구멍 막아놓고 물 막아놓고 그러고 그냥 뭐한 2분 되면 죽을 거야. 그러니까 우리가
So during the time of torture by communists, what did they do? They put you in water and not make you not able to breathe, and that is our biggest threat to your survival. And they were all the things that has been done during the time of communist or also dictatorship.
상을 탁 하고 치니까 그거 죽었대. 뭐 심장을 갖다 무슨 마분지도 아니고
And they say, they just hit that person who was being tortured and he's dead, but a person cannot die so easily. So for us, it's like water, air, and what else? And also the land, right?
그죠? 햇볕
These kind of conditions are immobile conditions.
부동이다. 삶의 그거는
Just like without sunlight, we cannot survive, and if there's no land, where can we live?
어디 살아? 의지처가 없어져 버려야 그죠? 이제 그런 연후에 그게 너무나 당연하게 있는 거
Because they seem to be there all the time for without any special cause. We just feel like they are there, but there's nothing that is happening in a coincidental way in our life. And after that,
그다음에 이제
there's also meaningless conditions that change.
무상의 조건 자체가 약간 변화. 이를테면 우리는 변화의 조건이라는 우리 음식이라는 것은
Like for example, food for us is not a condition that doesn't change.
김치가 부동 조건 아니야. 그러면
Like kimchi is not an absolute condition. So if you say kimchi is an absolute condition, then people who does not take kimchi, they should die. But people who does not eat kimchi, they also survive.
조건인 게 공기, 물 이런
But those animals, they can survive without kimchi, but they cannot survive without air or land too. But Korean people,
한국 사람들은
a lot of Korean people might say this is an immobile condition, but it is not so. There are a lot of people who does not take kimchi.
김치가 먹고 싶어서 고향
They might be homesick if they cannot find kimchi, but they do not die.
또 우리가 일단은 뭐 옛날에 그 유교 조선시대 때
Like you say, in olden times, the hair that we used to grow on our head by these noble people, they said this kind of hair, the growing hair growth, is an immobile condition, and they will not be able to survive if you cut it. But this is not immobile condition.
많은 것도 부동 조건이 아니야.
This is a condition that you want in your life. Just like your hair, you plumbing your act of plumbing your hair.
그러면 그렇게 되고 쪼글
There is also all conditions that's set by you. It has got nothing to do with your life.
그래도 사는 데는 지장 없어. 지장 없으니까 했죠.
Even your makeups are also conditions.
부동 조건이 아니야.
You can survive without it. You can also survive it with it.
그럼
And also there are conditions that's latent.
잠재
When you say those latent conditions,
우리들 조건 가운데
it's something like
조건들이 있는데 이를테면 여러분 아이가 태어나서
when your baby is born and when the baby looks like you, then there is a latent condition. And also it's a latent condition that your DNA is similar to the kids. Your DNA is passed. But also the thoughts when they're being passed down.
거의 대다수가
A lot of thoughts are not being passed down by DNAs, but they are being passed down by learning.
배우면서 그 조건이 형성이 된다고.
All these things, all these conditions are latent conditions. So if you also look at conditions in a depth, then they can be also divided into many different diverse reasons. So just like these things are the same, these things are related to meaningless conditions that we talked about in previously, and also when you ask how is omniscience caused in your consciousness, then you should expect about the latent conditions.
이 불법은
When you talk about this Buddhist doctrines, they got everything to do with your heart, and that is the essential point of your heart.
아이들을 가르칠 때도 아이를 생물학적으로 나를 담고 있다라고 생각하지만 저 아이를
Even as a babies, although it's born from you, and so you feel like that baby has got everything to do that's similar to you, but there are a lot of things that are different, and then you wonder that person is so different from you, and then you wonder, you start questioning the life, their existence. There are also times when you get so angry at them, although they are born from you. I heard that your son is very stubborn.
그러니까 네 속에서 태어났는데 좀 못마땅스럽지.
So although you gave birth to your son, you somehow have upset feelings towards your baby.
이
So when you say your heart consciousness, those things that gets passed down by DNA, some of them are only natural things.
실제 의식은
But in reality, all consciousness or all the behavior or all the acts of speech and everything else is caused since the person is able to acknowledge their surroundings.
물론 그게 이제 깊은 의식은
And
전생에
it may be some of it that's been passed down from your previous life. And when you say we have a Buddha's knowledge or omniscience,
몸으로
there can also be that also has to do with your human body, but that's also got to do a lot of things from the heart.
불교 공부는
So in Buddhism, the most important thing that you should have is the study of your heart.
않는 것이 아닌데 마음 공부를 중심에 두고 하는
And that's why in Buddhism we think the study of the or practice, aesthetic practice is the essence.
의식의 본성은 아주 분명하게 알 수 있는데 이것은
We can know the nature of the consciousness in a very precise way, but that is formed when you are able to analyze the opponents.
마음이 본래부터 있는 것이고 영원한 것이고 뭐 소소영령한 것이고 뭐 이제 이런 소리를 자꾸 이제 해산되고
We say a lot of things about others or consciousness, and we do so many experiments, but many of them are wrong.
어떤 대상으로 생기느냐면
The property of our consciousness itself is
대상을
it begins when you're acknowledging the object.
우리 눈을 통해서
So we also call this 안식, which is caused by the sight,
그냥 혼돈을 쓰지 않아.
and also listening to the teaching.
이 소리에 의해서 귀로서 감지해서 내가
We call the 이식 that you hear the Buddhist teaching, and that by hearing that you are able to cause that kind of consciousness.
냄새를 맡고
But the consciousness that's caused by tasting is caused by 오식. It's called 오식,
전오식
and we call all these things the five consciousness that's been talked about previously.
안식을 일으키고 이식 비식
The consciousness which caused the hurt change by seeing, tasting, smelling, hearing, and also
정리하고
smelling,
하는 것을
and organizing those six things. We call them consciousness by the brain,
앞에를 5개를 취합해가지고
because brain is a part or organ that collects everything and also
우리가 이제
collects everything and organizes them. We call that consciousness.
뭐냐면 이제 의식이 생겨나면서 부작용이 하나 생겼어. 뭐냐면
There is a side effect of this, which is the cause of I.
나가 말이야.
There began the beginning of I, like I am hungry, like I have a problem. When you start saying me, me,
나가 하다 보니까 이걸
it became agony.
그만 내가 생겨버렸어.
I did not exist from the beginning, but since I kept saying I,
하다 보니까 우리 애들
same with the babies. They do not know that when they grow up, when they grow a little, and if you give them something to eat, then they say it's mine. And then after that, a lot of things that belongs to I keeps occurring.
내 자꾸 생기잖아, 그죠? 그러면
Since the consciousness of I began to grow, the consciousness that you saw previously through five different consciousness, the five different devices.
그러면 나라는 의식이 생기면서 어떤 의식이 같이 따라 생기냐?
Since the beginning of I, there is also something that you wish to do is being caused.
이게 생겨버려. 이걸 갖다 뭐냐면 하고자 할
The desire to do something is caused. The hurt to the desire.
내가 하고자 하는 것이
So what is it that I want to do?
내가 하고
Something that I feel comfortable, something that is good for me.
내한테 좋은 거 좋다라는 것이 생긴다고.
There arises your preference, and from the preference, what happens?
이게 악이 아니고 오가 생겨.
Then then the things that you like and dislike is also being caused.
좋고 싫은 게. 그러면서 이제
And the formulation of all this, then it starts from your heart. You take it through the eye, you take it through your hearing. You decide, oh, there is not that I don't fit into that, and that does not fit to me. That fits to me, and your antenna get developed in that way.
하나가 그렇게 이제
And so even when you go to shops,
가지고 가게에 가가지고도 나 그래서
that's why those scholars or those practitioners, they do not go to shop and choose clothes.
그냥 되면
When the time comes, they just tailor it and wear it. the color, the shape. They do not judge or measure so many things. They do not try and they do not have the greatness. The consciousness that centers around I makes everything complicated. Listen to this carefully. I don't like this. What are you going to do if you don't like this? There's the notion of right and wrong. If you have the sense of right and wrong, the stronger that is, that person will have distinctive sense of like and dislike. And if it becomes strong, then with the person she or he thinks they like, they almost feel like they give out their whole heart to them. But to those they don't like, even if they just hit them in the market, or even if they just meet them in the market, they will ignore and go. Their heart itself will change from the beginning. Then what problem is caused? Although maybe the other person might be under the condition of existence that he or she has to survive, but just because you dislike that person will not disappear from your life. I don't know, when I heard from Dr. Zhang, he said they really hate the smell of fermented soya sauce being cooked. So when they hate someone, when they hate someone, they start moving into their house and start cooking that bean paste soup, and then the other person, they cannot even report to the police because this is something that they eat. The smell of this coarse ruining causes so much trouble, and so eventually the other person leaves from the house. So just because of your hurt of dislike of that person, and since you fit into your desire of not liking that person, and that causes all the complications. So there are a few things that you might also not like, and there are a few things that you might hate. And even if you should attain to the level that even if you're sitting with some buns in front of your table and you're eating it, you should become mundane to it. Because it's already there in your stomach. Just because you do some packing, you think it's not there. So the sense of distinguishment is not a pure feeling in your heart when you see the other opponent, but this is identified consciousness. Since you can identify, you want to have the good things and the things that you like beside you, but you cannot. But those things you don't like and those things you want to be far away from, you cannot be staying away from it. So that also causes agony from your life. For example, like if you have someone in your if you're watching TV and if there's an actor that you don't like and comes out of it, then you can just put it as a spam and not see the other person. Then maybe the TV will resolve very well if you're able to choose what person you want to see.
잠시 뒤에 시티전 시계가 9시를 알려드리겠습니다. 뚜뚜뚜뚜 그러면 땡 전두환 대통령께서 땡
And then there will be so many like complications. Just because you hate something, you did not see it.
전부 다 무조건 스파크 뉴스 가장 큰 뉴스가 땡이 됩니다. 땡 전두환 대통령 됐습니다. 또 뒷말 또땡 전두환 대통령 됐습니다. 아무리 뉴스 할 게 없어도
Then in the end, you will have no news to watch, and every time it will be just like, beep, oh, he became a president, beep, he became a president. And maybe since there's so lack of news, maybe there should be news like me pulling my hair. Nowadays, you just sit and watch. Oh, if this person has Chanduan has became a president, if became a president. I just sit and watch. But of course, I'm not just sitting there without any thoughts. I just sit there and think it's not right. So the opponent, your sense of identification has a property of distinguishing the opponent. So in your head, the consciousness that identifies the opponent, it also has the property of identification and memorization. But if there is a me in between, then it becomes the classification. But if you're able to throw out the I from there, then you're able to see the phenomenon as it is. But if you have I in between, then you are only able to see from the spectrum of I. If that happens, then everything, the whole world will seem to you the apple of your eye, or the eyes through the glasses of your eyes. And then all the miseries will be caused, and you might also feel misery, or you might also feel happiness just because of your taste, or just because of your desire. And then you start laughing on your own, and you start feeling miserable on your own, and then you will feel like you have blessing from the Buddha due to this. Once there was someone who came to me and said everything happened due to Buddha's blessing, but he had mispronounced the word, and I thought he put some rice cake at the back. But that has got nothing to do with Buddha's blessing. That's all your life's virtue. And if something like this is caused, then after this, something that was not before, just like your DNA, which is not there. If that happens, then you will start repeating things that you like, and just through the act of repetition, it becomes an atom of energy, and it stays within you. And also the things that you dislike, since you keep repeating that, since you keep repeating the feeling of hatred, you will end up hating that will just stay inside your body as a feeling of hatred. And so those people who have trouble with your husband, they become like enemies at times, and so they wish not to meet them. But in the end, they try not to meet them, but they might bump at each other on the way or on the streets. That's the happenings of our everyday life. So our consciousness gets passed to the next life. If it's passed down to your next life, then you're again born from just the way that you have done so far. If your consciousness was to have a high nose or have a proud nose, then you're really born with a very low nose. Everything you're born as per your deeds. So here we can know the property of our consciousness very accurately.
대상을 파악을 하는데 그 대상 파악이라는 것이
So,
내라는 것이 나의 고집이라는 것이
but the
대진 파악이라는 것은
but the thing that if you have something, if you have a very precise eye as a latent condition, then that becomes a very forced condition. You are not able to see as it is.
되면 이렇게 그게 뭐하라 그래?
We call that if the stubbornness to keep eye disappears, then we call that anatta. Even though that will not seem like out of condition, but you'll be able to see the that as it is. You'll be able to see all phenomena as they are. So there will be nothing that you'll be exaggerating, and even the fear of death. It's also caused because you feel attached to your body and you're scared of your death. But it's nothing actually. Because of fear of attachment, you have more fear growing inside of you.
If you look at it this way, the property that you perceive has not been caused by something else. For example, just because of Brahmin God, it's not your Atma has not been formed, and there is no Atma that lasts forever. The thing called I is also produced from my perception of myself. You understand?
알겠죠? 예.
How did the time fly so fast? Are you cold? Is there cold wind coming from that side? You should arise warm heart just like Avalokitesvara. Now the question is, how does the perception arise, and how is it possible to expand them infinitely?
그러니까 우리가 인식이라는 것은 그 이제 생각이 이런
So perception is something that the heart is aroused, but how do we categorize that as perception, and how do we expand them and expand it to the all knowledge? That's the question. Your ability to perceive the object is actual property of your consciousness. So this weird thing that we are able to see outside with eyes, right? But we cannot turn back our eye and see our inside. You cannot see your inner body with your eyes, and this means through the object. And what is that object? The eye's object is not those eyes, or is not those tables or something else that you see, but it is light. But for example, just because there is no house or table, our eyes does not become worse. But without light, we are able to find out that our eyes deteriorated over time. Just like those animals who live in darkness forever, their eyes do not work properly, but it's just that they still have the shape remaining. So the object for eyes is through the light that we can be sure. Then through the reflection that we see, our hearts to identify the difference grew. through the ears, you cannot see. Through the sound, you listen to the sound, and it causes the hurt phenomenon inside. If there is Atman here on your head, then you should be able to see even without eyes. If Atman sees, isn't it? If that has the ability to see, if it's Atman that sees forever, then you are able to see without eyes. But later they would say, they usually say that Atman sees through the eye, and that there lies a contradiction between two statements. If you are able to see through this, then you should be able to see without ears too. Then there should not be physically disabled people because of eyes or because of their ears, because it becomes a condition that you do not need your senses, because Atman sees everything. If you elaborate that way, and if you say that everything is bright on its own and everything is seen and everything is heard from the very beginning without your senses organs, then that is a big contradiction. But in that, there are a few things that blocks the heart, which disables you from seeing the absolute form, the absolute knowledge. There should not be something that blocks you. So we have this statement. If you do not have this thing that blocks your ears, if there's no phenomenon that blocks you from hearing the prayers, then you will know. We repeat the things that we hate, and we repeat things that we like, and through this repetition, the attachment cause also forms ourself, and because of this blockage, you are not able to see on your own, and we call that disablement. And that's why even if you have your eyes open, you are not able to see. Even if your ear is fully open, you cannot hear as they are. Because of that, it's the job to remove this karma. And what is essence of removing this karma? It's the agony, or it's the greed. It's also blocking all the hurt that you. It's also blocking all the hurt that you try not to give up, or you try to give up just because of your hate or your love. There are things that block. Next question is how does those obstacles arise? And likewise, you have to think about how to remove those obstacles. The obstacles of consciousness that blocks you from understanding or perceiving the object properly, it is ignorance, the ignorance wisdom. It is very scary, this ignorance. This is Buddhist word. You're scared because you're not able to know, because it's something that you don't know. But if you know, then you're not afraid. Even people, the most scary person is the person who does not know how does that person feel on its own.
지도 지가 뭔 마음을 내가서 어떻게
Those persons who does not know how they feel and how they are going to act are very scary people. Even your husband,
민감쟁이가
if your husband is ignorant of his behavior, then he's very scary.
무지 무서운 일이라.
Okay, so where does this ignorance arise?
이게 왜 생기느냐? 그것도
That's also from the greed and also from attachment.
육조는 그걸 갖다
Some said it's like a cloud on a mountain. Just like a cloud, your greed arises and your attachment arises.
우리가 정상적인
And those things which you are able to think properly are blocked. So in Buddhism, they don't tell you to throw out your greed from the very beginning, but they tell you that even if your greed is inside,
속에 있더라도 우선 부처님 견해를 명확하게
first try to have a proper idea about the Buddhist philosophy or Buddha's teachings. Then you'll be able to know what is wrong and what is right.
그게 팔정도의 앞에 정견에 관한 문제야. 정견에 관한 문제다. 무지는 존재의 실체를 왜곡하고
The ignorance distort the existence of the real existence of the existing thing, and also they put you into very extreme idea. They are very dangerous things. And also our understanding that that we have attained enlightenment is very scary.
무지에 대해 말할 때
When you're talking about ignorance, we are talking about these essential conditions which are in deficiency, and also we are also talking about those obstacle conditions which does not allow us to perceive the objects properly. Ignorance is actually coming from your greed and ignorance. And what is ignorance? It is a fact that you are trying to identify or distinguish depending on your greed, and because of your greed, you are not able to see, and you have been blocked, and that's what we call ignorance. Okay, look here. If there is someone who is suffering from Alzheimer,
그러면 우선 내가 우선 나라는 것에
and if I concentrate on myself and if I am attached on myself, then you will think that why does that person try to make my life miserable? And then it becomes so that you're not able to see his own suffering because of his Alzheimer. You understand what I'm saying?
무슨 얘기인지 알겠죠? 그게 이제 가림이야.
And we call that blockage.
그게 이제
Those are the blockages that blocked us, and they are not removed by wisdom too.
이루어지거나 그렇지도 않아요.
You have to remove your desire and your ego. Then only those blockages that has been blocking me will start disappearing.
사라지기 시작한다. 그런 얘기예요.
Through the different types of ignorance,
근본적 무지입니다.
the very basic ignorance is the ignorance that distorts reality.
알기 위해서 보면 이게
If the very basic ignorance that blocks my knowledge is strong, then the truth that you are seeing, the reality, seems distorted, just like you are looking through some lenses. And if you're looking at the distorted idea, then just like you are seeing, your heart also gets polluted, and through the polluted heart and behavior, you'll be seeing the reality and you'll be acting, and that makes everything more difficult. These parts,
부분들은 모든 우리가 일상생활을 해 나가는데 이게
this thing that we talk about, throughout everyday life, this ignorance is influencing our life, and throughout these influences of ignorance, our life gets distorted. And then you have to study Buddhism, and even through without Buddhism, and if you're able to survive your life without the teachings of Buddhism, or with greediness or with your agony, then you cannot live properly, and they will not have a proper shape of life. And this ignorance is the biggest disturbance. Through the analysis of this ignorance, then you have to find the consequence to remove this ignorance. The fault of the hurt lies from the potential of the ignorance. So the biggest fault of the hurt lies from the ignorance. If I give you a very extreme example, a thief, he will think that he will become rich and he'll be able to live rich through his thievery. Then that's through his repeated disturbed thought of evil thoughts. And if it does not change, then through his reputation, he will not be able to remove himself from Trinity, and that way he will be suffering from his agony throughout his reincarnated life. Before you throw out your greed, or before you throw out your bad feelings, you should be taught by any teacher. And if you only trust that you will live a different life by throwing away your greed, then the thoughts that your thievery or will disappear gradually, and then later, in a gradual way, the thoughts of your thievery will disappear. And then if you're able to see that, then you will be able to live a proper life. The fault of hurt comes from ignorance and the potential of the ignorance. So the ignorance keeps repeating, and through the dark shade of the ignorance, there comes the obstacles of the warm heart and a proper thought. You have to experiment and decide before that whether you are able to identify or distinguish ignorance from the hurt, or if you are able to see the end. If you look at it from this end, then ignorance is not that foolish. That means ignorance is actually foolish. Ignorance distorts the proper understanding of the reality. That is the hurt that makes you misunderstand the object, and therefore you can remove the ignorance by having a proper way to tackle proper way to tackle. With a proper understanding to tackle this ignorance. There is some spelling mistake in the text. So when you say you're escaping from ignorance, then you should begin with the act of reacting from the ignorance. Because it's difficult to escape from ignorance in the beginning. You should understand, or you should learn the proper perception of someone who has gained enlightenment, and that's why it is important. If you don't do that, and if you don't do that, then you're often misunderstood or mistaken that you do not live in ignorance when you're actually living on ignorance.
실제를 왜곡하는 무지와 그 무지에 대응하는 방법은
The ignorance that distort the reality and also the ignorance that reacts to this ignorance rely on the cause and conditions.
사라지면 또 소멸을 합니다. 그러니까
They rise,
무지라는 것도
they arise, and they also disappear when the conditions for these abstractions disappear. And when the conditions for the ignorance arise, then they also grow together with it.
하면서 그게
If the conditions and the disturbing facts, they act as facts that strengthens or eliminates ignorance at the same time. There are ways. For example, if you eliminate these causes and conditions, then your ignorance will disappear.
그 무지의 원인과 조건이 무지의 원인과 조건이
But they are actually desires that's arising from your greed. And due to your greed, they are distorted. Then you might wonder what is the difference between the two. The ignorance that distorts the proper understanding of the reality, and if that's ignorance, then it means that it cannot expand. That means it should not expand infinitely. So, once again, you shall not expand ignorance.
무지를 아주 무식한 것을
Just like us, if we did not study Buddhist texts at all, but we have gained enlightenment directly, you should not say those kind of things. If you expand those things, then the problem gets more serious. So ignorance is actually fact that you just believe that the opponent or object actually exists.
자 이제 여기에서 정확하게 나오네요. 그 무지는
So if you ask where did the ignorance start,
아직과
then it started from the greed because of your identification and also from your desire or your attachment.
그러면서 뭐라 그러냐면
And while looking at the object, what phenomenon is being caused? The
착하는 대상은
the objects that you have been attached to have sense of eternity. Everything began from it. So my body, although from your mouth or although from your speeches you say that my body is too old, so I'm going to die soon. But in your heart you have this kind of feeling that I live for tomorrow, and from tomorrow I live again. And again, sometimes you say, my mother has died, and after her died, you feel like after her death, you feel that my mother is watching over me from the sky, and you say, your mother is watching you, but you cannot even protect yourself, or your mother cannot protect herself.
그러니까 어머니 몸뚱아리 좀 변했지만
Although you feel that your mom's body form has changed, but the spirit of your mom hasn't changed, and you have the attachment for the attachment for the soul of your mom, and you expect it to last forever. And those people with a little more serious religious faith, they believe that your body is dead, but your spirit remains forever, and it goes to heaven or it goes to hell, and you'll be able to meet someone after you die in your heaven. It's way better to meet the person here in this life. So there are hurts like that.
그런 마음이 있는 거 아니에요?
But even this thing money, like if you have attachment,
이런 있으면
if you have 1 million, then you pray for it, you sit and clap that it will last forever. But
근데 이제
if there's something that you don't like or you dislike,
있잖아요.
the funny thing about your hurt is those things you hate, you expect them to disappear sooner. So there are two extremes.
그 양극단이 생겨요.
the grandfather, your husband, because he causes so much trouble, you expect him to die sooner. You pray him to die sooner, and then you have your feeling in your heart. So those things that you hate, you expect them to disappear soon. And those things you like and you're attached to, you want them to last forever.
두고 안 없어졌으면 좋겠고.
But stronger your attachment is,
강하면 강할수록 이게 뭐냐면 두고
because you want them to last forever. And since you are attached to it, you want them to stay with you forever, and in that way your attachment grows. And while doing that,
그러면서 이제 이 세상은 좀
the world changes into nothing, but you expect the world to last forever.
멀어지는 것이 그게 종교의
And Buddha has
지적한 바가 있어요. 죽은
spoken about this. The fact that you'll be reborn even after your death.
물은 죽음을 얘기하는 거고 유는 거기 가서도 있었으면 좋겠다는 거 얘기하는 거예요. 죽은 뒤에도
And Buddha has said that this attachment to belong even after your death. Because of these things, we start distorting the reality. Especially the distortion that's being caused in religion is stronger.
사실 종교적인 게 종교적인 필요가 사실은 없어.
There is no need to be religious. What's the need to be religious in this? Because you don't study.
하도 공부들을 안 하니까 이제 근기들이 하열하니까
Because you don't study, we follow these things that we offer to the great Buddha. If you know the truth and if you practice the truth, then you don't have to rely on Buddha, because knowing the fact itself means you're actually offering to Buddha. Let's end here. Where are we?
어디쯤 했어? 네? 끝까지 할까? 요것만 정무지는 대상의 실제로 존재.
So ignorance is actually the belief that the object actually exists, and through the perception, you misunderstand that the perceived objects actually last. So we say that the green pine tree on the mountain should always be green. There is no way that this tree on the Nam mountain will be green forever. But that's relative example, so just leave it so. So my perception, if you feel that my perception will be eternal, then whichever God, whether it's your ancestor God or whether it's Buddha, you will start thinking that everyone is eternal, but Buddha is not eternal too. But this perception is a perception that's been distorted from your ignorance. That's why this perception is also not a valid perception. Let's end today here, and let's remove this. Last night when I went to Spiti, it's next to Ladakh, and there in the double monastery, this wall painting was very famous. Sorry, this painting. This painting is similar to our painting, And because this is just a printed picture on a photo book, so just buy a frame and
거기에 맞는 그 기성품으로 나와 있는 게 있답니다. 그게 해서 평화 대신
and just put it in a frame, and I think you can also use it instead of 탱아.
없으니까 이제 못 받는 분들은
There's only about 56 copies, and those who does not get it, shall I give to you on your next life?
갖다 드린다고는 하지 말고요. 온 분들만
Please do not keep one for those who is not here. Just take it among those who is already sitting here,
받으신 분들은 받지 말고.
and those who already have received it, please do not take extra copies.
한 장씩들만 쭉 하십시오.
Please try to take only one copy.
잠깐 지금 안 받으신 분 안 받은 분 손 한번 들어보세요.
Raise hand those who have not received it. Please give it to her.